All right. Hi, friends. Got a shot in my knee yesterday. Still a little sore. Got the fan on because it's a little hot. Okay, we're on chapter 15. Uh, a lot happens in this chapter, so if you're not paying attention really to the story, you really need to pay attention in this chapter. So, we've already got our characters all. You got all of your characters. You've got Amy and Jim and Bob and Ben and Mara and Sal and Teddy. Teddy hasn't taken a real big role yet, but he will. And so let's just continue. I'm going to put my fan on. I'll listen to the audio, make sure that the fan sound isn't overpowering. Hopefully it's not. All right, ready. Chapter 15. Now, remember how chapter 14 ended was Amy's dad got shot. There was an attempt to sabotage the pipeline. Here, you might need this, the young man said to one of the police officers. It's his phone. I found it in the outhouse where he was hiding. The police waved to Amy and Jim as they were about to pull away. Can you look at the numbers on this phone, please, and see if any of them are familiar to you? Can't this wait? Amy asked. I need to get to the hospital, she said, pointing to the ambulance that was driving away. I'm sorry, ma'am. This will only take a second, the officer said as he handed her the cell phone. Do you recognize any of these numbers? She looked at the phone. Jim was still staring in disbelief at the departing ambulance. She turned quickly, pulled the keys out of the ignition, jumped out of the car, and threw them into the deep mud. You, she cried. There were only 3 numbers that appeared on the phone, and one of them was Jim's. You did this, she said, pointing at Jim and backing away. The police immediately ripped open the car door and threw Jim on the ground in the mud. She tried to look, but she couldn't. It was just too painful. Ben put his arms over her and wanted to protect her from the driving rain, Her legs finally gave out and she collapsed, sitting in the mud, sobbing. Mara, Sal, Bob, and Teddy were helpless. There wasn't anything they could do. Amy eventually got on her feet with Ben's help. She wiped her face. Can somebody please drive me to the hospital? She asked weakly. I want to see my dad. Sure, Mara said kindly, reaching for Amy's hand. There they sat at the hospital, in the hospital waiting room. Amy, Ben, Mara, Teddy, Sal, and Bob all waited anxiously for word on the lieutenant. Amy was thinking about the words her father had said. How did you know? She quietly asked Ben. I didn't. At least, not for sure, he replied. I knew somebody was out to get you. I knew it wasn't me, so it had to be somebody else. Then, one night, Mara and I were talking about it. Jim told you to see me in New York, and Jim said we should eat at that restaurant where we ran into Mara's father. It all seemed like a little bit more than a coincidence. I started suspecting Jim more and more as I thought about it. Then, Mara saw a picture of him with you in a tabloid, and she recognized him. She'd never met Jim before. She had to think about it, but she was sure she had seen him somewhere. She was positive she had seen him at her father's office. We got worried about you and I thought how dangerous it could be for you if Jim was working against you and you didn't realize it. Mara took her hand. She could see this was all very hard to hear. Ben continued, I didn't want to call you. Besides, you probably wouldn't have taken my call. I knew the only thing I could do was come down here and see for myself. He took a deep breath. He didn't like telling her all of that, but it had to be done. He knew, my dad, I think, she muttered. He knew it wasn't you. She kind of halfway smirked at him. The police approached the group. We have a few more questions, please. Which one of you is Mara Thompson? Mara looked up. It's me, she said, confused. They asked her, Miss Thompson, do you know why your father's phone number is in the suspect's phone? She swallowed hard. I think so, she said sadly. Well, ma'am, I think you should know that the police are now questioning him in New York. If you want to tell us anything, now would be the time. I, um, I don't know my father's business, really, she said, looking at Ben and Amy. She wanted to help Amy find out what happened and why her father was shot, but she didn't want to help the police convict her own father either. She doesn't know anything, Amy interrupted. Mara took a deep sigh of relief. Amy loved her father. She could only assume that Mara loved hers too. Mara sat down, wringing her hands and looking like she was about to cry. It's okay, Amy said, reaching out for her. No, no, it isn't, Mara exclaimed. My father most likely hired that henchman to stop your pipeline, she said, as if she were hearing her own words. He's the reason your father is here, she muttered to herself. Ben, you can stay. I should go back to New York. I don't belong here. I would very much like you to stay, Amy said, reaching for Mara's hand. I mean, if you want to go see your father, I understand. But I don't want you to leave. Neither do I, Ben added with a smile. I have two girls here who really need some taking care of, and it would be a lot easier if they were both in the same place, he said with a lovable and protective way. Mara sat back down. They all waited for a long time. When they got the news, they all cried together. Amy went back to her apartment in Baton Rouge. She looked around the place. She remembered sitting there with her father just a few days ago, the words that he had said. She wondered if he had enough time to tell her everything that she would need to know in life. She still couldn't believe he was gone. She started to pack her stuff and Jim's stuff too. She hired a moving truck to return Jim's things to his family. He had tried to call her a few times from jail. She didn't answer. She remembered when she thought she could do anything because she had her father and Jim by her side. Now she didn't have either of them. Need any help? She turned to see Bob standing there. Well, actually, she said and leaned onto some large boxes, smiling. I'm sorry, Bob said as he was sizing up the heavy boxes. You don't have to, she began to say. No, I do. I'm sorry about your father, but mostly I'm sorry for the way I acted. I was so caught up in myself and my career. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I should have known that you were in trouble and you were being ambushed, and I didn't see it happening right under my nose. I'm sorry. I was too busy looking out for myself, and I didn't see a friend in need. Look, you can make it up to me by carrying these boxes of Jim's to the truck, she said as she touched his arm, trying to make light of the situation. No, really, Amy, I mean it. I was stupid. Bob, I'm guilty too. So is Jim. We all put our own interests before each other's. Look at me. I have nobody now. But I'm successful, she said, throwing her arms up. Okay, but I have nobody too. So we're alone together. Let's make a pack, Bob began to say. No, no more packs, Amy said sarcastically. But you gotta get your article back, she said, changing the subject. More than that, he replied. I'm getting a new show. Oh, she said, but you got your article back, she said, changing the subject. More than that, he replied, I'm getting a new show on ABC. I'm replacing the reporter who sabotaged you in New York. How ironic is that? I'm going to be a news anchor, but I'm going to continue the article, of course, he said as if he wouldn't abandon a friend to further his career. So where are you off to now? He asked her. I'm taking some time off, and then I'm heading to the Northeast. We are beginning the cross-country trek from New Jersey and eventually to South Carolina, she said proudly. There's a lot of work to be done. So, Mara's dad, huh? Bob continued. Yeah. Do you think the charges will stick? Amy asked Bob. Well, he's got a lot of money. Personally, I think Jim is going to be his scapegoat. Are you going to the trial? Huh? No, she replied quickly. I don't blame you, Bob replied. I can't believe that he was working for them the whole time, she said, getting angry again. You know, a part of me wants to hear his explanation, but the other part of me wishes that he would just die in a prison cell. She was getting really angry now. I know. I don't know what was driving him, Bob said. You know, he grew up kind of poor. I always wondered what he did for money in college. I guess I assumed he had a ton of student loans. Isn't that something? Amy thought out loud. I didn't know either. How can you be in a relationship with somebody and not know anything about them? She wondered out loud. They went on and packed up the two trucks. Then they went on their separate ways. So, there was a lot. I'm going to just stop this video here for a second. I'm going to start 16 right away.